So let me give an intro into what we're going to be talking about, right? So we live in a day and age where hardcover books may not be appreciated, but storytelling is very much alive. We love to hear stories of amazing feats being done where the main character is counted out and still finds a way to be victorious. On top of that, we love to see humans thrive in impossible situations, even if the success was brought about by some outside force. We love to see man as the champion, the hero. We love a good old Superman story. But what about if, in reality, Superman really had no powers? And it really wasn't Superman who was the real superhero after all? Well, in reality, there is no Clark Kent. Humanity is helpless, and the world actually needs God to save them. Unfortunately, we still might find a way to turn around and try to praise man. Because deep inside, we as humans seek self-glorification, even for our own salvation. And this is something we need to guard against. We give testimonies, and any testimony given should always point people to Christ and what he's done for us. In the past, the present, and the future glory we're anxiously waiting to see. So let's talk about today's topic, testimony or Flesh-imony, right here in the basement where theology meets the thoughts of life.
Right.
Yeah.
You're good at that.
That wasn't in the outline, man.
That was good.
That was something I put together today.
That's awesome, man.
As I was thinking about it, man.
That was dope.
How did do you remember coming to Jesus, or I should say, theologically sound, how did Jesus come to you?
How did grace come to me?
How did grace come to you?
Right. Yeah. So in 1990, I came to know Christ, and grace, by his grace, I've been saved. And I do remember an instant where it happened. I know that's kind of like sometimes people beef on that, whether you can actually know or should you say that, it happened at this point. I just know that one night I attended a service, and I never went to church. I didn't grow up in church.
How old were you when this happened?
15 years old.
15, wow.
Yeah. So I was 15. A friend of mine invited me, and for whatever reason I said yes. Went to service. I just felt drawn, to respond, and I responded. And then I came to Christ, man. I got saved. And then from that night on, I was never the same. I was reading the scriptures, the Old and New Testament. That's all I kept doing, was reading scripture. I read the New Testament twice, and then I just started to learn the gospel, and I grew in my faith, man. And then I got involved in ministries. I did hip-hop ministry for a long time. I was in leadership. I did sound. I did children's ministry. I did all the ministries you can think of. Just got immersed in the local church.
You were churching it up.
Yeah, man. I was just involved, got connected. And then from hip-hop ministry, I was an MC back in the day. That's what I used to do. And then that kind of died down. And then the Lord started working in me to actually become a pastor, and then I still had my hands on hip hop ministry. What I did was I set up a studio. We had a ministry called All for Souls that I led and kind of oversaw and discipled some of the men involved in that, and also a lady with my wife. We pretty much raised her as our own. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And she was a dope MC also.
Who, your wife?
Yeah, right. That would be pretty dope.
The female rapper that was in the group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was young, and that was pretty dope. So yeah, as I was transitioning out, got into pastoral ministry. At the age of 30, I was ordained, and then I planted a church called The Gathering in Millersville back in 2011. And then pastored that for 8 years or so. And then recently, I just planted another church here in the city of Lancaster called Christ Alone Fellowship. And so, yeah, that's kind of like a nutshell, but not raised in church, man. Raised in a very dysfunctional household. My mom did the best that she could with what we had. My father was very abusive, lived a very rough life that led him to get AIDS and then eventually die.
Oh, wow.
So I saw that happen, and just my whole life being, my background as far as being raised as a child. Father never at home, and when he was home, there was abuse, there was drugs, there was problems. So that was pretty much my upbringing, and then the Lord saved me at 15, came to know Christ, and now I have a wife, 3 beautiful kids, and thank God the Lord's done a good work, man.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so, yeah, I would say that in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Look at God.
Right.
That was almost the name of the episode, y'all.
Yeah. Right.
That was almost the name of the episode. If we revisit this topic, we definitely got to call it Look at God.
Yeah.
But we got to spell it G-A-W-D. Maybe a couple A's.
Quotes.
Look at God. That's what's up, man.
Yeah,
That's what's up, man.
Yeah. So,
Christ Alone gang. Yeah.
Christina, what's up?
Speaking of which, the church that you pastor now is Christ Alone.
Christ Alone Fellowship, yeah, man, in the city of Lancaster, Bible
Right there.
Fellowship Church.
Why don't you? Did you throw it up? I don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. It takes a couple seconds
it
for
takes
me to
a-
see it. But yeah, we wanted to definitely put that out there for those of you that want to check out our church. Yeah, we're right here in Lancaster, PA, man. It's a blessing to be here in the city.
Yeah.
I moved here in 2006.
From Harrisburg.
From Harrisburg, PA.
Right.
And I can't get into a whole lot. I have a long story, and maybe I'm just long-winded. But I was raised half of the time with my mom, half of the time with my dad. I ended up moving with my dad when I was like 7 or 8, and he has a military background. 20 years in the military to be exact. So it's very tough background, very tough upbringing for me. So growing up, my dad didn't play games, and so yeah, it took years for me to actually learn how to be around people and be in a good mood. It really set me back. I had anger issues. I had hate problems with my dad. Like, I literally hated my dad. That's the reason why I moved here to Lancaster, was because me and him had got to a point in our relationship where we fought. I fought my dad, and I got sent to a juvenile detention in Harrisburg. They heard my story and let me out very quickly and let me move to Lancaster with my mom. And so I promised myself, because I got in a couple fights in Harrisburg before I ended up getting sent to the juvenile detention. It was mostly with adults that I fought with. So I always had problem with authority, older people that pretty much trying to tell me what to do. I had a problem with it. Don't ever tell me what to do. That's pretty much what I was, because of growing up. That's all my dad did was tell me what to do. So I really had a problem with authority. And I moved here to Lancaster, and my mom is not an authoritative type of person at all. Like, I was very easy when I moved here. I had no rules. I was like 17 at the time, and I pretty much wilded out. I ended up having a kid when I was in high school. I was a smart kid, though. I had a full scholarship to a science university. I ended up having to drop out of, I said I was a smart kid, like I'm not smart anymore. I was a smart kid at one time, man. I remember I was just like you. No, I got a full ride to a science university, and I had to drop out to take care of my son and my baby mom at the time. She's still my baby mom. But anyway, I had to drop out and take care of them. And so I think my son it was 2010. So 20 years after you got saved, I felt God's call on my life in 2009. And a bunch of different people around me. One person urging me to read the Bible. My grandparents urging me to come back to church. They're heavy churchgoers in my family, a bunch of bishops and evangelists. I was raised in the church heavy, so they were begging me to come back. You have somebody begging me to read the Bible, another person telling me, they threw me this Lecrae CD, her Rebel. Somebody threw me another CD that was called Soapbox. You know what I'm talking about? R. Swift.
So.
R. Swift. Yeah. And like I just heard that music, and it made me go, whoa, there's Christian rap? Like, I can, because I love hip hop. So it's like I can listen to I can listen to hip hop and then still like live for God. And so I listen to like Cross Movement, and then like a couple months of listening to that stuff, getting back into the Bible, it made me realize like, yo, I need to give my life to Christ. Like theologically, some of y'all may not like how that sounds, but that's exactly what was going through my mind at that time. I need to give my life to Christ. I need to receive Jesus into my life. That's exactly what was going on in my mind. I prayed and fasted going into 2010, and I really, there's a whole story behind that, but I really felt as if I felt God's presence and heard his voice, but that's another story. God is good, and he preserved me all these years, almost 10 years later. This January 1st would be 10 years now that I've rededicated my life to Christ. Again, it may not sound the most theologically sound, but I'm telling you, that's exactly what was going through my head, and God is able to work through those things. So throughout the years, I was involved in ministry. I was a youth minister for like 5 years straight, involved in church activity. I studied and got my license as a pastor, and then I left that denomination because I had serious problems with their doctrine. And I just said I can't be a ordained pastor here if they're going to keep on preaching this right here and I have to preach that. And I ended up running into a church that Los was pastoring, The Gathering. And I love The Gathering, but they weren't in the city. And I felt God's call in my life to be in the city. By this time, I'm married with 3 kids. And I just felt God's call into my life to tell me to go back into the city. And that's where I'm at right now. I joined the Christ Alone fellowship group, and then that turned into a church. And like soon after joining that church and really fellowshipping with everybody, we started this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring it into today. Right. We started this podcast, The Basement, where theology meets the thoughts of life. And we wanted to talk to y'all about theological topics, but also make it relate to life, and even talk about some things that are on our mind that may not be the most theologically sound things to say or to think, but we like to wrestle through these things. Yeah. We like to wrestle with y'all through these concepts and through these ideas and all of these things right here. So yeah, that's where we come, right here to The Basement. We went live. We tried to make it just a local thing right here in Lancaster. And then Wrath and Grace caught on to it, and they heard about it, and they were like, yo, we love what y'all are doing. We would love for y'all to do it on our platform, which is like not only nationwide, but really global. Some of y'all are outside the U.S. So now we do The Basement every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we love talking to y'all every episode. Yep. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit about us. As we go, we're going to continue to drop some more gems on our life and the life experiences that we've been through. Every single episode has a connection to our life in some way, too.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Every single episode.
Every episode's connected to each episode.
Exactly. That's something else. You guys are starting to see like the Easter eggs and all of the theories. Like those of you that are conspiracy theorists, dig into our stuff. You might find something. Yeah. You might find something we didn't even know we put in there. Yeah. But yeah, all of the episodes are connected some way, somehow. And I'm just going to be Christian and say it must be the Holy Spirit.
Well, I think it's a result of just, always going back to the scriptures. I think when you do that, you do find consistency in how you talk and what you do. If you're attempting to always refer to the scriptures as the authority, then you will have patterns, that are connected in your life, a consistency,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yep. The reason why we're doing this episode today is because, and I put this in quotation marks, church is a circus show. That seems to be the thought amongst a bunch of outsiders and even insiders that are part of the church. They can see that, especially here in America, evangelical churches just seem to have become a circus show. Yeah. And not so much a church service.
Yeah. I think of like sometimes it's hard to know the difference when you see a video of a church service or so-called church service and a concert.
Right.
And it's hard to say, what is it? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you can't tell the difference.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, even when it comes down to like speaking in tongues, I saw this video of like a bunch of evangelicals speaking in tongues, quote unquote. And then somebody showed a video side by side and showed other people in another country speaking in tongues, quote unquote, right? And they were like, what's the big deal here? Like, can you see the similarities and the differences and all of this? Well, the ones that were in another nation speaking tongues, they were actually part of a whole different religion. And I can't remember what the religion was, but it had something to do with like Buddhism or Eastern mysticism. But they were speaking in tongues the same way that the Christians were calling themselves speaking in tongues, and it sounded exactly the same.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's not just the speaking in tongues thing. It's not just the gifts of the Spirit that makes the church look like a circus show at times. It's when we get up there and we grab the mic and we give our testimonies.
Yeah.
Sometimes those testimonies can be better labeled as flesh-imonies.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we need to guard against this stigma. We need to defend biblical principles of order in the church, right? Not really putting God in a box or limiting him, but putting the church in order. And what I mean by that is like, we don't want to grieve the Spirit.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Did you want to get into a little bit of that right there? How we can grieve the Spirit when it comes to that?
Yeah, so grieving the Spirit, the scriptures are clear that a Christian can do that. I think that along with disobedience, because as a Christian, the sovereignty of God is real. The Bible's clear about that. Christians can disobey God. We can grieve the Spirit in doing what the Spirit doesn't want us to do. One of the things as far as testimonies is that I've seen in the way we can disobey God and being self-glorifying in our testimonies. It could be just all about theatrics, all about the oohs and ahs in the crowd, wanting to, for people to look at you a certain way, instead of being a witness of Christ, which is different. So you could be all about your story, which people have become enamored by mostly, about your story than the gospel, and so a testimony is supposed to be about what Christ has done to save you, and it's become more about, a show. You begin to really dig into details about how bad you were, how down you were, and the reputation you had or whatever, to get people to really be enamored by that, rather than, the wretch that we were, the sin that we committed, and talk about God's grace,
right,
and his saving power that brought us to deliverance and salvation. So it gets sketchy, man. I've seen it happen, and it's sad because, I'm not going to point people out or anything, but I do have people in mind that, I see posts on Facebook, I see things happening, and it seems like they want this reputation now.
Yeah.
This, this story to be accepted, this narrative about how bad they were and how now they're doing all these good things, but there's no gospel in that.
Right.
They'll post, it's just a sad thing to see that people use their stories and what God has done, which I believe this person is a believer, but like they're doing it in a way where they want attention. It's just sad, man. When you give your testimony, it should be to the glory of God alone, and you should be careful with that.
Yeah.
I don't think people aren't careful enough with their testimonies.
Yeah. Francis said testimony should be the gospel. Ooh, here we go. Remember Francis, Francis always coming through with it, man. Always. This is kind of a tough one, Charles says. It is kind of a tough one because I always look at it like, and this is something maybe we'll touch on today or maybe in depth elsewhere, but listen, man, and I don't know this. Let me just say it. If Christ died before the foundation of the earth, That means that your whole life was God literally pulling you into him. And our whole life is literally that. Just a game of tug of war. God literally pulling us and us pulling against him. And even when we say we come to grace, we still fall back and we need to be forgiven again. You know what I mean? And it's constantly tug of war. That's what it is. Isn't that what Israel means? One who wrestles with the Lord. And I just think us being the true Israel, being part of that true nation of God, that's just what all of us do. We just wrestle with God.
Yeah.